Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This is Rob, and this is another episode of A Look at the Book. This is episode number 25, and in this episode, we are going to be taking a look at the Dwarves of Rockhome. This is number 6 in the old Gazetteer series from Basic D&D. The copy that I have here is a reprint from Drive-Thru RPG, the full color reprint. And we're going to dive into this in a minute, and I'm going to tell you what all's in it and why you might want to pick up a copy to use in your own D&D games. But first, if you enjoy these types of videos or the other videos that I do, please consider becoming a subscriber. Join the RGG community here. You can also find us on Facebook at Rob's Game Group, all one word. I'll put a link in the description. And give us a thumbs up because it helps us circulate the videos. So there's a lot to go over in this, and obviously, like any of my look at the books, I'm not going to sit and read you the entire thing. And I'm just going to tell you what's in it and why you might want to pick it up. So the Gazetteer series that they did kind of was the end of the run of basic D&D as everything was transitioning to first edition D&D. And the Gazetteers were kind of what they were using to flesh out the known world in D&D. There was, I think the Isle of Dread was the first place they started dropping information about it. And several other modules had little small tie-ins, but then they started doing a Gazetteer series, and each book focused on a particular area or race or kingdom in that area, and it's a really good really good area to run a game. So if you are, why would you want to pick this up? If you're playing old D&D, which you can still get the books for. You can either buy them, you get them print on demand, or buy the PDFs from Drive-Thru, or you could actually hunt down the old copies of them if you don't have them, maybe on eBay. They're going to be a bit more pricey on there. But there are some purists out there who only want to play something that has the Dungeons & Dragons logo on it. Now, I'm not one for spewing the Dungeons & Dragons logo at all. But there are multiple ways to use this book, and how might you use it? Well, again, if you are playing the original rules, then for basic D&D, like especially this is all tied into the BECMI stuff. So if you're doing that, then these are fantastic because they flesh out all of the stuff from the BECMI box sets. Basic and expert and all that, and or the rule cyclopedia, you could use that, and they are providing you a world setting called the known world, which eventually ties into Hollow World, and then Mystera becomes the known world, but originally it was just the Gazetteer series. So I'm not doing these in order. I've bought several of these from Drive-Thru RPG, but I'm just doing them in order of the ones that are interesting me the most as I'm reading them. And you may want to get it if you're playing with the old BECMI stuff, or if you're playing a retro clone that is, similar rules. The rules are not that different. Like, it's pretty easy to convert stuff over and use, as some of it's just fluff that you're going to convert over and use. So whether you're using the original rules, the rule cyclopedia, or a retro clone, these books I think are phenomenal, and they are a really good resource for you. Now, you could use them as is, like, okay, well, I'm going to take Rockhome and drop it into my campaign and have a nation of dwarves in there, and I have all the information on Rockhome right here. Or you could go through the book, pick and choose the things you like, steal what you want to, rename it, and drop it into your campaign. The choice is really up to you, like with a lot of things. Now, back in the old days, there wasn't a whole lot of definitive information about the dwarves. you had your standard rule information for playing a dwarf, but this was kind of the first time that they put together all of the history and knowledge about the dwarven civilization and put it into one book. So you had an entire book of basically just fluff information on a kingdom of dwarves, and it's really, really good. It's written by Aaron Alston. Excuse me. Came out in 1988, and this was, like I said, this was Gazetteer 6. I will read from the back of the book. Dwarves have a reputation that is both good and bad. On the good side, they are known as loyal, hardworking, dependable, and fierce defenders of their home. On the other side, they're considered, well, a little dull. No longer. The Dwarves of Rockhome, the latest gazetteer from the Dungeons & Dragons game system, gives you a complete in-depth look at a vibrant, living, anything but dull society. Included is information on the history, government, economy, and geography of Rockhome, as well as entries on the major cities and towns, and biographies on dozens of important figures. For the first time, learn the truth about the dwarven magic users, clerics, and religions. And, like the other gazetteers, the Dwarves of Rockhome not only includes complete adventures, but background information for home plots. And of course, there are the high-quality, detailed, full-color maps you've come to expect. Dwarves of Rockhome is the sixth in this popular series, providing a rich tapestry of background material for players and DMs alike. So first of all, let's just take a minute to appreciate this Clyde Caldwell cover, because it's fantastic, like all of his artwork. Alright, so you can pick this up off of DriveThruRPG. You can get the PDF for $4.99. You can get the print copy, which I did, for $11.50. Or you can get, what I actually did, you can get both print and PDF for $13.50. That's not bad. Less than 20 bucks, so yeah. So I'm just going to kind of flip through and just tell you what kind of stuff is in here. It is full color, but that mostly means that it's just, there's a little bit of color on the pages. Almost all the artwork is still black and white and really good. So you open up, it says Welcome to Rockhome. It tells you what the book is, about the arrangement of the gazetteers, Rockhome, the dwarves, and their history. And then we go into character creation and what things might be different. And there's not really a whole lot that's different. Now, this was the book that introduced the ability to play a dwarven cleric, which was, oddly enough, so secretive that no one outside the dwarven community at the time knew of dwarven clerics. So if you played one, you actually were supposed to run 2 character sheets and appear as a dwarven fighter, and there were certain spells and things you could do, but you could only do them to other dwarves. Now, if you're playing a retro clone like Basic Fantasy or White Box, you can obviously just play a dwarven cleric. It's in there, but the way they described it in here was really good, and they give you the information you need, including the experience table for playing one. There's a section on dwarf clerics and alignments, clerics and their spells. Then it talks about, you know, all the normal stuff, their minimum scores, prerequisites, hit dice, armor, weapons, and fighting, dwarven cleric saving throws, and spread throughout the book there are these nice little sections where they show like dwarven weapons and stuff, and that's really cool. So then it talks about backgrounds for Rockhome Dwarves, which is where we add in clan and family, and it adds in the Burador clan, Everast clan, Herwoff clan, Scarad clan, Scarist clan, Torcrest clan, and Wirewoff clan. And each of these clans had multiple families within their clans, so regardless of which family was, you rolled or you chose a clan to be part of. And then the book has a pretty thorough description of each clan, their outlooks on life, philosophies, and social standings. Then there's a whole section on names and prefixes, languages that the dwarves know, and then general skills, because they did start in the Beckney set introducing skills in as an optional thing you could use. So you can do that here as well. Let's see, what else? Learning more skills, time and use. Alright, DM and character background stuff. Dwarven society and politics. Work, play, and sleep. Craftsmanship. Architecture, warfare. Progress of the Dwarven Age. I would like to point out, because I've heard this argument multiple times over the years, and I'm just going to state this, because this being the definitive dwarf book, as far as I'm concerned, on page 6, under character creation, the dwarf, to create a normal dwarf player character, you need only follow the rules from the Dungeons & Dragons basic set. Rockhome dwarves, and consequently all dwarves of the known world, have some distinctions from what's been written about dwarves in general. The first thing that they clarify, the number one thing that they clarify, and it is listed as number 1, dwarf women and beards. Female dwarves do not have beards. Their faces bear strong, craggy features of the dwarven race, but they do not have facial hair. So that puts that to rest. No female dwarves with beards. It's just a joke. Let's see. They talk about the classes in society, dwarven government, then the relations between the different clans, the guilds that they have. There's one that I love, is the Thorns. This name is short for the thorns in the sides of those blasted elves. The clergy, the hammer, the underside. Then it talks about the economy of Rockhome, player character jobs they can have, Rockhome coinage, the Rockhome military and how it's broken down, and then a complete list of Rockhome garrisons. And let's see what else we got. Oh, we have the Dwarven calendar, which talks about important dates in the Dwarven calendar along with the phases of the moon. So that's pretty cool. The dwarf language and how it's broken down, and there's a lot of that, and then illustration of dwarven inventions and how they work. The illustrations in here are just phenomenal. Alright, character advancement in Rockhome, time and manpower, dwarven craftsmanship, or dwarven craft magic, which is where your magic user is, which is not really a magic user. They kind of have to spend materials money and time money and XP to make magic weapons and armor. Is how you get your dwarven magical dwarven swords, or magical dwarven axes, or magical dwarven armor. And it has a full description, like with weapons, how to experience spent, time spent, the skill rolls made to do it. So basically, your magic users were dwarven craftsmen who could put some of their self into the weapons. Talks about dwarven science. There's some funny stuff there. Let's see. A layout of how they set up their cities, city blocks. And then we enter the next chapter, which is the history of Rockhome. I'm not going to go into this because it starts out reminding you that only the DM should read the following sections. Players should read no further, because the first entry in here is Dwarven history as the DM and the Immortals know it. So there is stuff that you want to leave spoiler free, and that's what I'm doing right here. And we're going to go past that. Then we have a chapter on the nation of Rockhome itself. It talks about the borders, the mountains, the lowlands, the rivers, passes and accesses, plant life, animal life, and communities. And then a large section on Dengar, which is the capital city of Rockhome. And you have a ton of information on this page, breaking everything down, and then a map of the upper city here. There's an upper city and a lower city. And the next page is going to get us into the lower Dengar and give you a map of it as well. And then, locations. Then you have other sites of interest. Obviously, Dengar has its own section, but you have Evemere, Ferryway, and Greenstone, Girard, and each one of these are different areas or towns or whatever, and they have all the information on them here. Kurgel, Smageft, Stahl, and then you have the which is the one that's the ruins. I can't remember if that's the one that's the ruins or not. But you have another map of that city in here too. Alright, then you have the forts broken down, and they have all the information on here about the forts. You have Fort Dwarves, and then a bunch of other ones, villages. I'm not going to sit and name them all, but you have villages of the different clans and the important NPCs who run the clans. Again, more fantastic artwork. And that goes on for quite a bit because there's a lot of NPCs that are really well fleshed out in here. And then we have monsters section. Old monsters. Alright, so monsters which are already familiar to the DM from previous publications and which occur in Rockhome include the following. From the basic set, the giant ant, the white ape, the normal bat, the black bear, the boar, the great cat, the dragon, goblin, gray ooze, hobgoblin, kobold, mule, ogre, orc, normal rats, and wolves. From the expert set, black pudding, giant, horse, troll, vampires. From the companion set, beholder, rock or cave toad, and a snow ape, excuse me. From the master set, a beholder and a Sasquatch. And then it's always fun to me to read these older books and see, when stuff came into play. And new monsters that were introduced in this book were the choker, and it has the monsters in here and their stat blocks. But the choker, the Lake Clintest monster, and the Rockhome lizard, which there's an adventure hook about in here, which is kind of cool. Then we have a Rockhome campaign, and or a discussion. In this discussion, we talk about campaigns involving Rockhome and how you set those up. And let's see, they talk about more dwarven politics, more maps for how dwarves have things set up in their cities. More of a side cutaway view there. And campaign problems, dwarven money. Okay, then we hit this section, which is adapting the Gazetteers to the AD&D game. So if you don't know, about the time they were doing these last runs with the Gazetteers, AD&D was coming out, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition. And it says in here, many of you may be avid players of the AD&D game. For your convenience, we've included this section to help use the Gazetteer in your campaign. The differences between D&D and AD&D games are small enough the adaptation shouldn't be much of a problem. However, for those of you who are not familiar with D&D games, there are still a few details that need to be clarified. So they talk about alignments and classes and coins, dominions, equipment, encumbrance, experience. They talk about the immortals, which was used by some people but not others. And let's see, then we have an actual campaign adventure that starts called Race for the City. And it's for characters levels 1 through 3. And it's a full adventure. Then we have the Lost Caverns, which is levels 4 through 6. And each of these has, a map that goes with the adventure. Lost Caverns. Then we have Clan War for character levels 7 and up. And then we go into adventure ideas. And these are more than just like one-line adventure ideas. You have the name of the adventure idea, the character appropriate levels, and then the basic plot right here, and then how the characters get involved, story progresses, that kind of thing, so you can set it up. There are 13 of those in here. We have one called Guard Duty for level 1 characters, one called On the Road for levels 1 to 2. Characters levels 1 to 3, we have the Lizard Roundup, which is the adventure I was talking about with the Rockhome lizards. The Kidnapping of Thraris, levels 2 to 3. And then you have Expert Adventures. You have Hammerfall, levels 4 to 6. War with the Underside, levels 4 to 6. Road of Woe, levels 4 to 6. Metal Amok, character levels 6 to 8. Fear and Loathing in the Kanates, character levels 6 to 8. Dragon Lair, levels 9 to 11. Red Tooth, levels 9 to 11. Then you have Companion Adventures. And each of these, if you're playing Back Me, is stepping up the complexity of the game and adding stuff too, because that's what each box set did. It added more levels, more complexity to the game. Even at the end of the day, it's not a complex game. Basic D&D is really simple. And it's like I play it, I use all of this with basic fantasy. And there's very little work that I have to do to convert things over. But there's tons of adventure ideas in here. There's tons of background on dwarven daily life and society and government and law and crimes and punishment. And just everything you want to know about dwarves is great. And like I said, if you don't want to use this in your campaign because of the name, you can always swap the name, give it a different name and drop it in, and odds are your players are not going to know you didn't write all of it yourself. But then we get into a map section in the back. Some really great full color maps. Upper and Lower Dengar City, Rockhome, and the surrounding areas. I mean, there's just some really great stuff in here. More maps on Dwarven city blocks and how they're broken up and set up. And that brings us to the end of the book. So, I personally think you can get a lot of use out of these books, whether you're playing the old school D&D or you're playing a retro clone, or, I mean, to be honest, you could really use a lot of this even with modern D&D or Pathfinder if you're looking for plenty of information on the dwarves that you really like and you want to drop it into your campaign. Nothing wrong with using this. You could rename it or not rename it. And to be honest, unless you're playing with a bunch of grognards who are familiar with old D&D, the Dwarves of Rockhome, the Nation of Rockhome, is going to be something new to most newer players anyway. They're not going to know what you're talking about. So, you can slip that one in for free. But I actually did that in my game. I actually just introduced the Dwarves of Rockhome into my current basic fantasy game. And I have a Dwarven hold in the north where they're at, but Rockhome, where I placed it, is from the southern lands. But I had an envoy of dwarves come forth on a quest. They're going much further north and interact with my players. And they've kind of joined forces to go help them on this deal to reopen a mine that had been closed down in the north. And I'm using information from here. I literally just I'm taking the parts of basic D&D's known world that I like, and I'm implanting them into my world, because why not? That's what's great about these books. And they're cheap, print on demand. So, that is basically a look at the book. I recommend it if you like dwarves. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't run games or you don't care about playing a dwarf or reading about dwarven history or so on and so forth, then obviously you don't want to pick it up and you probably shouldn't have clicked on this video. But for those of us who do, and dwarves are one of my favorite fantasy races, ever since the very beginning of my days with D&D, this is a book that I have always wanted, and I am super stoked, super happy to get a copy of it. It is fantastic. If you love dwarves, you are selling yourself short by not having this in your collection. Again, you can use it as is, or you can steal ideas out of here. There's plenty of it. Anything about dwarven culture that you want to know, you can find in this book and then put it in your game. So yeah, for $4.99 for a PDF or $11.50 for a print copy, I highly recommend it. And that's our current look at the book. I know I had some guys that have been watching that have asked for some of the Gazetteer stuff because I showed off that I got some of it. And it's coming, guys, but I also have to read it and plot out the video and everything. But I started with the one I really liked. I'm probably going to take a look at the Shadow Elves book next, just because I'm digging it too. But any of those kingdoms from the Gazetteer that I like, I'm going to drop into my own world and just use it as is. I mean, that's what old D&D is for sure. It's all plug and play. You find what you like, you add it to your game, and that's all I'm doing here. And that's all you can. That's what you can do with it too. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Again, subscribe if you enjoy these types of videos. Give us a thumbs up. Until next time, good gaming and good luck.